As we get older, especially in retirement, it's pretty natural to look back and try to make sense of things. Those personal battles we've all had, maybe a tough relationship, a sadness that just lingers, or a habit we can't seem to shake. And we tend to tell ourselves one of two stories about it. Are these things just old wounds from our past that never really healed? Or are they about the choices we're still making today? Let's kind of dig into that together. This really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? On one side, you have the story of trauma, the idea that our pain today is really just a symptom of a much deeper hurt, probably from our childhood. But then, on the other side, you've got the story of agency, that we're individuals with free will, We can choose our own path no matter what's happened before. And these two ideas can feel like they're in a total tug of war, which can leave a lot of us feeling stuck and confused about how to move on. So to cut through that confusion, here's our plan. We're going to start by really diving into that compelling story of our wounds. Then we'll switch gears and look at the empowering idea of our own choices. We'll explore why trauma doesn't have to be our destiny. And then finally, we'll see how you can actually find your own path forward by taking the best bits from both of these ideas. Okay, so here we are facing these two really powerful but very different ways of looking at our struggles. The goal here isn't to find the one right answer. Nah, it's about understanding the power and maybe the limits of each story so we can piece together a more complete picture for ourselves. All right, first up, the story of our wounds. This perspective has been explained so powerfully by Dr. Gaber Mate. His whole argument, really, is that our toughest struggles, things like addiction or even illness, they aren't just random failings. He says they're actually rooted in trauma. I mean, just listen to that quote. It completely flips the script. What Maddie's saying is that the addiction isn't the real problem. It's a person's attempt to find a solution. It's a way to cope with some kind of unbearable pain. So from this viewpoint, the behavior we see is just a symptom of a much, much deeper wound that hasn't healed. And that brings us to a really crucial definition. For Mate, trauma isn't the bad thing that happened to you. It's the wound that happened inside of you because of it. And here's the hopeful part. You can't change what happened in the past, but in an internal wound, that can be healed. He also makes another really important distinction. We all get the big T traumas, the horrible, catastrophic events. But small T trauma can be just as damaging. This is about what didn't happen that should have. It's that chronic feeling of being ignored, or not being seen, not being accepted for who you are as a kid. That stuff leaves a wound on a child's development. And Mate argues that these wounds don't just happen in a bubble. He actually calls our modern society a toxic culture that's kind of set up to undermine our well-being. It creates loneliness, constant stress, it breaks down communities, and it pulls us away from who we really are. Basically, it's the perfect breeding ground for trauma and addiction. If you want to see just how deep these wounds go, listen to this story Mate tells about himself. He's 72 years old, and he absolutely flies into a rage at an airport just because his wife is running late to pick him up. He realized later that this huge reaction was an echo of the absolute terror he felt as a tiny baby in wartime Hungary, when his mother had to give him away to keep him safe. It's just a wild example of how these old traumatic imprints can still be running the show decades later if we don't address them. Now, that story of our wounds, it's really powerful and it's full of compassion. It helps us make sense of where our pain comes from. But is it the whole story, or does it maybe risk turning us into passive victims of our past? And that brings us to the second story, the power of our choices. The key idea here is the difference between being influenced and being determined. Critics of the trauma is everything view would say, yes, our past absolutely influences us. It shapes the landscape, it makes some choices way harder than others, but, and this is a big but, it doesn't determine our choices. That freedom to choose how we respond, no matter how tough it is, that always remains. Psychologist Stanton Peele really hammers this point home. He points out that, trauma is a big risk factor, but the vast majority of people who go through even really severe trauma, they don't get addicted. Think about it. If trauma automatically led to addiction, the numbers would look totally different. This tells us there has to be another factor in the mix, our own human agency. This powerful idea that trauma is not destiny, it shifts our whole focus. It moves it away from our wounds and toward our capacity for freedom. It says that we are so much more than just the sum of the bad things that have happened to us. And there's an incredible example from history that makes this crystal clear. Just think about the story of soldiers in World War II. These were young men facing unimaginable horrors every single day. And in that context, heavy drinking became a totally normal way to cope. They made a conscious choice to drink to get through an impossible situation. But here's the amazing part. When the war was over, most of them just went home and stopped. Their behavior was tied to the situation, not to some permanent wound. That was human freedom in action.
And you know what? The data completely backs this up. This chart is talking about something called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, which are basically really stressful, traumatic events from when you were a kid. And look at what it shows. First, most people who have a lot of these ACEs, they never develop an addiction. Second, of the people who do, the huge majority eventually recover. And get this, a lot of them do it through what's called natural recovery, without any formal treatment. It's like as their life gets better, they make the choice to change.
So, where does that leave us? We've got these two powerful stories, one about our wounds, the other about our choices. Which one's right? Well, maybe the most empowering answer is that we don't have to pick one. We can actually build a more complete, more hopeful path for ourselves by taking the wisdom from both. It's really about holding two truths at the same time. On one side, we have compassion for our wounds. This means we acknowledge that our pain is real and we understand where it came from. On the other side, we have respect for our agency. This honors our incredible power to choose how we respond, to grow, and, importantly, to take credit for our own healing. One without the other is just an incomplete story. But together, that's a powerful formula for real change. We can even look at Gabor Mate's own ideas for healing through this new lens. Agency is about being an active player in your own healing journey. Healthy anger, that's a tool you choose to use to set boundaries. Acceptance is about seeing things as they are so you can choose your next move. And authenticity and autonomy, that's all about choosing to become the person you were always meant to be. See? These aren't just things that happen to you, they are active choices. And that's really the big takeaway. This isn't about blaming anyone, not ourselves, not our parents. It's about having deep, profound compassion for everything we've been through, for every single wound we carry, while at the exact same time, absolutely refusing to let any of it define us. It's about knowing that our past does not have to write the script for our future. So in the end, the real power is in the story we choose to tell ourselves. You can see yourself as a victim of your past, forever shaped by it. Or you can see yourself as the author of your future, an author who is armed with all the wisdom those wounds have given you. The story you tell yourself really, really matters. So which story are you going to choose to live by?